least the 2 feet of snow that we got from the previous weekend, which was an awful lot. And it was a beautiful time out here in Denver. But I've got the very best. She's killing it. Analyst and reporter who covers a lot of Denver sports and mostly the Colorado Avalanche. And we're going to be getting into that here in a few moments. But joining me is the best of them all, Kim Becker. Before we get into a little bit of some Avalanche talk in the Stanley Cup playoffs, let's start there with the Denver Broncos. Now, I know that first and foremost, this was never going to work out with Russell Wilson in the first place because it seemed more combative between him and Sean Payton, which Payton's a very passionate guy. But Russell seems way too optimistic. And I think at the same time, you just got to fit the culture. So let's start there because we know quarterback is a big thing now happening up in Denver. So as this kind of goes on, Denver's got a lot of things to think about, even from free agency and then leading up into the draft. And the obvious part is you need to have a leader at quarterback and somebody who meshes in Sean Payton. What's kind of the rumor buzzes you're hearing around in the Denver area? Because I know I said it before. I think if you put J.J. McCarthy or you put Bo Nix in this organization, this might work. What's kind of the rumor buzz you're hearing around?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. But the rumors that you are hearing are probably the same rumors that I am hearing. I mean, Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy being the options or good options at that might be because they could be the only options. I mean, even if the Denver Broncos don't pick a quarterback at 12, you've still got maybe Ryan Tannehill, right? Like maybe someone like that, a free agent that you can bring in. But with all of the options pretty much off of the board, once free agency and the tampering period really got going, and now with all of these crazy trades that have been happening, I mean, Jimmy G was maybe thrown out there at the very end of last week after Justin Fields had been traded to the Steelers, after you had Zach Wilson and Mac Jones be traded. Like all of them just are the question marks, right? I mean, I think that the Denver Broncos know that they're probably not going to be running mates for the playoffs for the next couple of years with the situation that they have gotten themselves in. I mean, it looks like Cortland Sutton is staying. Jerry Jeudy was traded. You know, of course, Russell Wilson is gone. Justin Simmons is gone. It's just a lot of arrows pretty much point to this organization really tearing every single thing down and building it up. And I know that the quarterback position is the biggest question mark of all right now, but I am very biased. I have had a very strong opinion about the Russell Wilson thing since this all came out. I don't think the Denver Broncos should have moved on from him. I think he was the best option at the time and probably still is now. They're paying for Russell Wilson regardless, right? They are paying him to play for a year at the Steelers right now. Why not just keep him? Because clearly you don't have a better option. It seems to me like Jared Stidham is maybe what they're going for right now, possibly picking a rookie at 12. But again, if you pick a rookie at 12, I just don't have the confidence that that quarterback can go into Sean Payton's system and succeed or accomplish whatever Sean Payton wants to accomplish. I mean, it just baffles me. It boggles my mind to think that Sean Payton took this job here in Denver and that this was the result that he was looking for. So to be honest with you, I don't know anything. I worked for the team on game days. I hosted the Red Zone stuff and I did some game day hosting, but I don't know anything from the inside. I mean, I haven't been there or around the team at all since the season ended. I was just contracted for the season just on game days. So I have not heard anything. I don't have any inside information. I just have my own opinions and my own speculation. And it just kind of looks like they're probably going to go with Jared Stidham, maybe having a rookie behind him if they pick at 12, Bo Nix, McCarthy, whoever it might be. But right now it doesn't feel like this team is going to be very competitive for at least a year or two.
And you know what's funny about that? What's crazy about it is because I mean, I live in the southern Denver area. I'm around Parker. So I've heard a lot of people around in the area that they were tired. They were sick of it. And it's just like, there's no dog mentality that we've seen from Russell. But I will say this. Payton did do the right thing as far as you were getting Russell in Seattle. You were starting to get 24 touchdowns, 8 picks. So you were getting something to his value. But I think what Sean Payton is trying to accomplish is this was a mess he kind of inherited. I mean, now it's not a good look for one, because you got a new ownership and you had a general manager where, in my opinion, if it came to running a business, I'm not going to pay my quarterback early if I haven't seen him play for 8 weeks. So I think they learned their lesson. They're going to have to, unfortunately, have to bite this one pretty hard. But eventually they should, at the very least, get this through. Because my opinion with it, it's been years since Denver's really built somebody through the draft. The last one that was successful was John Elway, and they won 2 Super Bowls. They've been to multiples, but they were able to win 2 in his career, and a great prospect out of Stanford. But I think this is kind of the thing. It's okay, even if you take a quarterback in the first round, build him up through the system. Hopefully, and Sean Payton, my thought was this: if J.J. McCarthy goes to Denver, I think he's going to get a second great coach because he's coming off of Jim Harbaugh's system and goes into Sean Payton's, and he's a gamer. He's fresh from a natty. So I think having a winning mentality, I think, is kind of the most important thing to bring into this building, right?
No, I think you're spot on with that one. JJ McCarthy knows how to win. Coming from Michigan, being under Jim Harbaugh, Harbaugh does not mess around. So it's not like all of a sudden coming into Sean Payton's system would be a shock to his system, right? Because he's worked with a coach who is all football all the time. So I definitely think there are some pros to that. My biggest concern is just that the NFL is a very different beast than college football is. And so it's the transition period that right now feels like they don't have a lot of. If you bring in JJ McCarthy, what does he do? Does he start or does he go behind Jarrett Stidham right now? I'm not saying Jarrett Stidham's a bad quarterback. He might be great. Maybe Jarrett Stidham's going to be the answer for this next year, and McCarthy could stand or be under center behind him, right? Be that second string quarterback. I don't really know what that looks like, and maybe it would be a competition for the starter position during training camp, just depending on what Sean Payton wants. The only strongest feeling that I have about this whole thing is that whatever Sean Payton wants, he will get. It seems like he has the reins now to the team. I wasn't sure if George Payton was still going to be around after this last season, just because he was the one who signed Nathaniel Hackett. He was the one who extended Russell Wilson's contract before Wilson even stepped foot on the field as a Denver Bronco, which, like you said, probably they've learned from that mistake right now. They won't do that again. But right now, it just feels like the Broncos have gotten rid of so many of their weapons already, so many of their strong arms when it comes to Justin Simmons. Jerry Jeudy, I know, wasn't playing that great, but he's now gone. I mean, Lloyd Cushenberry is gone. There's just a lot of the guys who did mean a lot to the Broncos. Josie Jewell, they were the veteran players in the locker room. They were that leadership statue that this team really needed. Now they're gone. So to me, it's like, what leader do you have in there? Can JJ McCarthy really come into the Denver Broncos organization, a franchise that has been held to such high standards for the longest of times? You have John Elway, who was, with this organization for so long, Peyton Manning, who is with this organization now, Steve Atwater, who is with this organization, these huge legendary names, Randy Gradishar. Can you come in here and be that leader that this team needs after such a kind of chaotic 2 years that this Broncos group has had? And now, like I said, a lot of those guys are gone. And so maybe that's the answer. Maybe McCarthy would be fine. It just worries me because the NFL is such a different beast, and there's so much more to it than a college football team. And it just doesn't sit well with me thinking that the Broncos could maybe make the playoffs this next year. I just don't think that they're going to be competitive.
Yeah, and I honestly think, it's going to take an awful lot of work. But if honestly, if you give me at the very least, if you give me about a 7-8 win season, maybe there's some hope that's in there. And maybe that's more of just the right coaching plan, the right direction. Because the big thing is, at least, Cortland Sutton has stayed in this organization, because I didn't think he was going to end up staying. I thought there would have been a deal in place. But with Jerry Jeudy gone, it seems like they've got full trust and confidence in Tim Patrick, and they've got a couple other options. But I do love Marvin Mims. I think kid really does work well in the slot, and I think there's a little bit of some optimism from there. But center's a big thing now with Cushenberry gone. But I was just as surprised as Denver fans was, Justin Simmons ended up getting released. I didn't even think this was going to be possible. But now they're moving on. It seems like there's going to be new blood in this building. Hopefully, because of how competitive the AFC West is becoming. I have yet to step foot in Empower Field, and so to see the energy and the vibe up in there, it's going to be really interesting to see. But hopefully, if they go in the right direction, maybe there's some positivity and some hope for the Broncos moving forward.
Hopefully. And I think just touching on what you said there, hope, I think that's the big thing, right? Is that we have to hold on to a little bit of hope, whether we're Broncos fans, whether we're just Denver natives, whether you just love football, whatever it may be. You have to have a little bit of hope, because I think it's so easy for us to get pessimistic and negative about what's going on. It's easy for me too. I'm guilty of this as well. But to have a little bit of hope is pretty much all we can have right now. And you just put your faith and your trust in the organization and Sean Payton, and just hoping that he knows what he's doing.
There you go, Broncos fans. Definitely keep that on the back of your head right there, because like you say, and the NFL stands for not for long. So there's hope and optimism that's there. So anything could happen. Let's shift to the NHL, because we know Stanley Cup playoffs are brewing up, and we know that there's a lot of teams. So I just want to recap this, because this was a crazy 3 days of trade deadline that happened. And I mean, my phone was buzzing all those 3 days. So what was your thoughts on the trade deadline, and what are things going to shape up for the Avalanche moving forward?
Well, I mean, now it's been 12 days or so since the trade deadline, almost 2 weeks since that Friday when the Broncos, when the Avalanche added those 4 new guys, Trennan, Middlestat, Duhaime, and Sean Walker. And they've obviously already been huge additions to this team. Now, if you listen to Coach Bednar talk after any of their games, they went 4-0 on this last road trip. They're heading home now. They'll be back in Ball Arena on Friday night. But if you listen to Jared Bednar's press conference after their last win last night in St. Louis, he said, it's still going to take a little time. There's some chemistry that needs to be figured out with the new guys, but so far they're doing really the best that they can. They've been huge additions in front of the net. Having Val Nichushkin back has also been really, really beneficial. I don't know the stats exactly off the top of my head, but their record with Nichushkin back in the lineup is so much better than when they are without him. So just having him back, having these 4 guys added to the roster. Clearly, the Avs were going all in, not only just for this year, but for a couple of years to come, because most of these guys are younger, or they at least have a few more years to be able to play in the league in their career here. So it definitely seems that, Bednar, McFarland, they're all really making decisions so that the Avs can be competitive for this year and the next couple of years. And I think that that's already translated. I mean, this was an insane road trip for the Avs to go 4-0. Come from behind wins. Last night against the Blues, they were down 3-1, down 3-2. It was their 23rd come from behind win last night in St. Louis. That is the most out of any NHL team right now. They have 7 straight wins. It's the hottest active win streak within the league right now. I mean, the Avs are just showing that they had some holes in their lineups, and they found the puzzle pieces to put into them. Now, they're not going to be 100%. I think that this road trip was a great showing of what they could be, and hopefully they'll continue to play to that caliber. But they still have some tough games ahead of them in the next couple of weeks before the regular season ends. So we have 5 games at home now. That's going to be an awesome stretch. Having the energy in Ball Arena is very helpful for this squad. Very, very great for this team. But man, coming off that 4-game road trip, all wins, new guys playing really well. You had Sean Walker with 2 goals the other night. You had Casey Middlestat with a couple goals. I mean, really, they're just showing to be great additions and fillers in the holes that the Avalanche had.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is when you're road warriors and you're up on the road and you're coming from behind, and I mean, that's most important, especially when you're translating it into the playoffs, because the playoffs are a totally different breed once you get into it, because the last thing you want is you want to be on a terrible note, and then all of a sudden now the question marks start popping up. But Casey Middlestat, I thought this was a really good addition because of a few things. One, they filled in the hole that they lost from Nazem Kadri and Burakovsky. I felt like this is exactly what they needed. Now, the hard part was you had to get rid of Bowen Byram. Now, I know that's hard, but I mean, just seeing him recently, I mean, this is a very hyper offensive centric team. And I think with Middlestat on this, and as young as he is, this is going to play out right for the offense, because if in case, he comes in, does his job, does his duties, maybe there might be somewhere where there's a contract extension talk in the middle of this building. And I mean, your thoughts on Casey Middlestat, because I thought this was the absolute ace in the hole that the Avalanche have been waiting to fill in after, last year.
Well, Jake, you're not the only one that thought that, because in the power rankings on ESPN this last week, the Avs jumped from 8 to 5, and ESPN said that reason is because of the addition of Casey Middlestat. They said that the Colorado Avalanche have Cale Makar, they have Nathan McKinnon, they have Mikko Rantanen. However, they couldn't do it with those 3. That's what ESPN said. So the addition of Casey Middlestat was what jumped the Avs from 8 to 5 in the power rankings last week. So I think that you are spot on with that. Casey Middlestat is definitely the guy that they were looking for to fill that spot. He's been playing so well. He also spoke to Katie Gauze during the game last night, and he said that Devon Taves, I believe it was, had that assist to him, and he just puts it in the right spot. And he said that that was such a great play by him. He's just really, really good at talking about what the other players out on the ice are doing for him to help make his job easier. And I think that just really speaks to his character and what kind of player he is. He didn't come in here to be the superstar, but he knows that there's superstars around him and that they can help him play to the best of his ability as well. So I think that the Avs have some great guys. Casey Middlestat seems to be, like you said, just a great player, an addition that definitely could get a contract extension. I've heard his name so many times thrown around over the last couple of weeks since he was added to the Avs lineup. And, I host Avalanche Live on Altitude. We've talked about him a little bit, but even in the national media as well, they were talking about Casey Middlestat and what that addition means to this Colorado lineup. And I mean, the Avs are making a solid stretch right here. They're making a solid run to the playoffs, and, they're right behind the Jets in the Central Division, neck and neck there. But I think that that's good. It gives them a little bit of a motivation, a little bit of that competitive factor to really finish the regular season strong. And I'm sure Casey Middlestat, coming from a team that had no playoff hopes, to now this team that has a very good chance of making a Stanley Cup run, is motivation in itself for him.
And now I will tell you, because I know that that the Avalanche and amongst a couple teams that want to get back into the cup really, really bad, these are usually the moves that you make. Now, I will say, I don't throw my fandom on the show, but as a longtime Vegas native, and the Golden Knights are not looking as solid, but they are a team that, it's not about what you do in the regular season, but it's what you do in the playoffs that really translates for these great teams. So in the previous episode that I had, and just a thought from here. So my previous episode, I revealed out my top 10 post-trade deadline. Now, respectfully, I had the Avalanche at 3, and in my opinion of this is, I love the moves they did, because Casey Middlestat, absolute ace in the hole. Loved the move. Now, the hard part is Bowen Byram going to Buffalo. Buffalo's going to have a core 4 defense that I'm really excited for what next year, because they're my worst team this year that could go and pop next season. But the good news is they got rid of Ryan Johansson, because, to be honest, I haven't seen him at his best since his Columbus days. And I think this was kind of the right thing for the Avalanche to do, open up some spots, maybe open up a little bit of some capital in order to get guys like Sean Walker and more players, and even Brandon Duheim. So I think the Avalanche, the only concern, and your opinion on this, my concern is, as far as how heated this team is getting, how long will the consistency be? And I think the position I'm talking about is goaltending. Look, I like Alexander Georgiev, and I do think when he's stopping the puck, when he's literally, his head is on the ice, there's times where you got to make important stops. So that's the question is how long of that consistency can that last? Because that does determine, because if you're playing against Vegas, or you're playing against Winnipeg, or you're playing against a really tough defense in Dallas, that's important moving into the playoffs, right?
Oh my gosh, spot on. And, that's the question I think that a lot of people have, and not necessarily just surrounding who's in net, but surrounding the entire team, especially after that first road trip after the All-Star break. The Avs only got 1 point on that road trip. I think they had 1 or 2 points. They had 1 overtime win, and the rest were losses. So that was really scary. That was kind of the time that I was like, I don't know. This doesn't look so good for the Avs down the stretch here, but they really turned things around on this previous road trip. And Justus Onanen is the guy that is the backup goaltender. And I think that we pretty much found the answer from the trade deadline, and no moves being made there at the backup goaltender, that he will be the guy that's in net. Now, Alexander Georgiev, like you said, has been playing so well. He really has been playing great, even though there were a couple early goals. I can't remember if it was the Vancouver game or the Calgary game on this road trip that happened right away. I believe it was the Flames game in that first period. And you were like, oh my gosh, how did Georgiev let those go in right off the bat? This is going to be bad for his mentality, bad for the offense, bad for the start. But that really wasn't Georgiev's fault. Those were some crazy goals, some crazy shots that were really, really hard to defend. And so I think it's really important is what's happening in front of the net. How is the defense playing? Are they able to help Georgiev? Because I really do think that he is a strong goalie, and he doesn't concern me as much. And honestly, Justus Onanen doesn't concern me as much as well. He was the first ever rookie Avs goaltender to have back-to-back shutouts. Now, granted, they were both against the Chicago Blackhawks, but still, one was on the road, one was at home. He also played last night, played very well. He is proving to be a solid backup goaltender. Now, the consistency, like you said, down the stretch in the playoffs is a lot different. It's a different beast. But I think working together so far, Justus Onanen has been able to watch Georgiev, to learn from him. And I think just giving Georgiev a little bit of a break is going to be very helpful for his consistency as well. So I'm honestly not as concerned about the goaltending as I was before the trade deadline. Now, knowing that they have confidence in these two guys And it seems like they just made great moves, on the other side of things in the different lines it's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is honestly the Avs getting out to a hot start, because yes, they have the most come from behind wins, 23 this season, but every single time another team gets out to a hot start over the Avs, I just get a little bit nervous when I'm watching those games. So I just hope that they can really continue to play well at home. They have the best home record in the NHL, and I'm hoping that the energy in Ball Arena is really going to help them over these next 5 games. And then they only have about 8 games after that. So I think that just making sure that they can get out to the hot start before the other team will help not only their own mentality, but the goaltender's mentality as well.
Now, I will tell you, it's definitely an interesting atmosphere. My first time in Ball Arena against the Chicago Blackhawks, I was expecting an SC top 10 from Connor Bedard. I was disappointed. I was like, I thought this was it, and no, it didn't turn out to be it. But it is totally a different vibe than what I'm used to in T-Mobile Arena, because it's very, very intimidating. But, however, I think the fans are great, and I think at the same time, you have the energy that's on your side. It's going to really, really help for the Avalanche. And I'm glad you shifted to this, because the part in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So my top 10s, I'll read these off to you. So from 10 to 1, I've got the Maple Leafs, I got the Rangers, the Stars, the Canucks, the Canes, the Jets, Bruins, Avs, Panthers, and then the Golden Knights post trade deadline. And the only reason of this is because the reason, so my top 5s, I thought Winnipeg did an amazing job getting Tyler Toffoli, because it felt like since they lost Patrick Laine a few years ago, they have not filled that hole in yet. So in comes Tyler Toffoli, and now it's like there's an extra offensive boost. But I love Connor Hellebuck. I think he's a very elite goaltender, sometimes kind of gives other teams fits. The Bruins, they got some veteran experience finally, because last season when they had the most historic regular season, they got exposed in the first round. And so now bringing in Pat Maroon, I think helps. They now are starting to learn the lesson from it. So I see them being a second round team, but as far as what the Eastern Conference looks like, might be too tough to tell. The Avs, Casey Middlestat, I love their hyper athletic offense. The goaltending, as we said, it's off to a really, really good start, but sometimes it's a different vibe when you're in the playoffs, but I do think I have a good confidence in the Avs, and I think they might make it there. And then there's the Panthers, which, by the way, Vladimir Tarasenko and Kyle Okposo, that really filled in the problems they had last year when they were in the Cup. They had a really good offense, but they didn't have yet the depth that they do now. Now I kind of feel like, okay, the Panthers want to get back in the Cup. And then as far as for Vegas, people don't think about this, but I've heard every bit of this. Vegas overgives at the LTIR. But if smart teams, there's been 16 of them that know how to use this LTIR thing. Because if you're opening up cap and you're sitting down and resting, your most important pieces come the playoffs, and you go and get a few of them that can help with depth, that's important in the playoffs. So I thought getting Noah Hannafin, Tomas Hertl, and you go and get Anthony Mantha, they are loading up because they want to be back into it. So as the playoffs atmosphere really builds up, this is tough competition for the Avs, because I'll tell you one thing. If they face off against Dallas, and Dallas acquired defense, which they're very known for, with a hyper-athletic offense that the Avs have, the hardest thing you don't want happening is you don't want that offense to get shut down by a defense like that. But I feel like in my prediction in the second round, I feel like we might see a Colorado Vegas second round again in this one. How do you kind of outlook the playoffs?
No, I think you're right. And Vegas is interesting because of all of the moves that they made. Now, I don't know if that was your fandom speaking, saying that they were in number 1 or not there. Jake,
oh, no, definitely not.
Okay, when it comes to the moves they made, I could see it. But, I think Vegas is definitely probably the biggest threat to the Avs right now, just because of the short history that they've had and the way that they both play each other. It seems like they both really bring their A game when they do face off against one another. But I think you're right. I really like that top 10 that you had. The Jets are very interesting. I think that the Avs might see the Oilers in the playoffs, and then the Jets are going to be a tough one to beat. I don't know about Dallas. I think that, all of these teams, the way it shakes out, they're all going to be threats to the Avs. However, I have heard Coach Bednar say this, and I've heard players on the Avs say this, that they feel like they really can't take anyone. If they continue to play the way that they did up in Canada this last week, if they continue to play that way down the stretch and then continue that in the first round of the playoffs, I think that any of these teams should be and will be a little bit terrified of the Avs and who they're going to go up against. Now, I do hope that the Avs can catch up to the Jets in the Central Division. Hopefully they can get home ice advantage in Ball Arena for the first round. I think that would be important, but I don't think that you are far off, thinking and assuming that the Avs will see the Golden Knights, and that one would be very interesting. We'll see how that all shakes out, but yeah, that would be a tough one.
Yeah, because honestly, I mean, when I look at, the bottom tier, I mean, the Leafs right now, I mean, good God, why did it take Treleving so long to end up making moves? And then they make two. And so I'm like, the Leafs are doing this again, which I'm like, it felt like they won the Stanley Cup after they beat the Lightning last year in the first round. And I'm like, whoa, slow down there, because then they got exposed by Florida by the end of it. And so it's like the Leafs, they're a great regular season team. But then when I watch Mitch Marner and I watch a bunch of other players they get exposed in the playoffs. That's where I'm like, yeah, this is not a true top tier playoff team. But I honestly say, as good as Vancouver's been playing, I feel like this is this year's foos goal to me, because it's been a long time since Vancouver's really had a tough team since 2011. And now they've got some of these pieces. I'm afraid that for some of these teams with playoff experience, they might get gassed. That's why I'm like, you face off against Colorado, you're going to get gassed. You face off against Vegas, you get gassed. So I think Vancouver kind of feels like fool's gold to me. But the thing with Vegas, my opinion on it is because they are like trade first rounds, rinse and repeat. And they didn't get rid of anybody. They just know how to utilize the depth. And then when it comes to important guys stepping up, they know how to fill those gaps, fill those holes, and they do have a really good goalie tandem. So that's where I'm like, I think teams like that with playoff experiences could very much be fits for teams that have not been in the playoffs for a very long time. So what's the latest we're hearing as far as Gabe Landeskog? Because I think that's kind of the thing everybody's worrying about. Because the thing is, going into the playoffs, I don't think if he's coming back healthy, I don't think the Avs, they're smart enough. I don't think they're going to push him out on the ice very quickly. I think maybe they might start him at the bottom, see how he feels. They got Middlestad now. They have a lot of these guys. So what's the latest you've heard from Landeskog, and is there a possibility we might see him in the playoffs this year?
I think there's still a possibility, but I haven't heard anything that the general public hasn't heard. Honestly, they're keeping it pretty quiet, or there's no updates or whatever it may be. But, Gabe was out at morning skate a couple of times at Family Sports out at the practice facility. But honestly, I haven't heard many updates recently. So I guess the possibility for him to join in the playoffs is probably still there. But again, I don't know anything.
All right. Well, hopefully if they get their captain back at the right time, but then that'll be a complete team at the end of it. And I think this will definitely be a team that will get serious come the playoffs and want to shoot themselves back into the Cup final at some point during this year. But I'm excited for what April and May is going to really give us, because this is the best time of year when playoff hockey really goes on. But appreciate you coming on by, Kim. Always killing it on Altitude Sports and, of course, with Avalanche Live. Appreciate you taking the time. We'll see what the Avalanche do. Look, do I really have to question what's going on with the Nuggets? Jokic is great, and they're playing great. I think I smell it back-to-back at this point. But like I said, the atmosphere totally different in Ball Arena. So if come the point, round 2, Vegas, Colorado, and we're here in Ball Arena, maybe I might have to reserve my seat to going and seeing that big game from there. But appreciate you stopping on by, Kim. Excellent job you're always doing up over there. And, of course, for Mile High Sports, appreciate you coming on by.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hey there, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you guys like, follow, and subscribe to get the latest from the show. Also, go check out a few of our coolest segments that we've had from previous shows. And also make sure that you stay up to date on the show on all platforms, wherever you guys find your podcasts.